This is catnip for the left. It's so easy. I mean, suddenly the left can see fascists everywhere. Fascists from Ohio to now Rome after Sunday's election in Italy, a new right-wing government there. They can see fascists from the Trump Tower now to Stockholm after its own amazing election this month. Now, these election results, on top of the rise of the far right in France, the Brexit vote in Britain, all this is brilliant for the left because they don't have to think anymore. They don't have to actually think. They don't have to argue. They don't have to reflect on their own failures. All they need to do now is to scream fascist, and they've won. It's so easy. Like Hillary Clinton last week, picking up on US President Joe Biden's new attack that Donald Trump supporters are really fascists, or as Biden puts it, semi-fascists, which apparently means the same thing. Anyway, Hillary Clinton is right on board with this line of attack.
I remember as a young student, trying to figure out how did people get basically drawn in by Hitler? How did that happen? And I'd watch newsreels and I'd see this guy standing up there ranting and raving and people shouting and raising their arms. I thought, what's happened to these people? Why did they believe that? You saw the rally in Ohio the other night. Trump is there ranting and raving for more than an hour, and you have these rows of young men with their arms raised.
I can sort of see where she's coming from. I mean, if you look close enough, you'll see unlikely characters everywhere, sort of raising their arms and giving Hitler-like salutes. I mean, like these two characters, boy, do they look suspicious to me. I mean, those raised arms. In fact, this is Clinton just refusing to accept that she lost to Donald Trump because she herself represented an arrogant elite that treated the poor like losers and schmucks and deplorables that should just shut up and, I don't know, follow orders. Now, if actually half of America are close to fascists, like, Nazis, and boy, America does really have a huge problem. But the weird thing about that is that most of the people now abusing Israel and the Jews, actually attacking Jews, don't actually seem to be Trump supporters. Seem more of the left, actually. Much more. And of course, the only American killed in an alleged act of political violence this year has been a Republican. His alleged killer, a Democrat, has said that he ran down the Republican teenager after a political argument. Now, how true that is, police are going to investigate. And another weird thing, it wasn't Trump supporters who burned down blocks of American cities in race riots, and it was actually a Democrat, now the vice president who raised money to free some of those responsible for all that political destruction. And it wasn't Trump supporters who threatened Supreme Court judges like fascists tend to do. No, then again, that was the Democrat leader in the Senate.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price.
No, it's not Trump supporters that are out there acting like fascists and destroying stuff and threatening people and subverting democracy and trying to twist the rule of law and also undermining the nation state just to get their way. And it seems to me the Trump supporters are the ones reacting to this, shall we call it, fascism. And the left doesn't want to even think that they are to blame for the rise of the right. Because this seems to me quite often to be a revolution against the bullies and the autocrats that so many of the left dreamed that they'd actually lead. They'd lead this revolution. Instead, they are the targets of it. And that's exactly what's happening in Europe. In Italy, the election there, Sunday, it's been won by a right-wing coalition led by a woman, Giorgia Meloni, whose father was a communist, but wow, she's already freaking out the media left because she certainly is not. The Atlantic, for instance, wails, well, the return of fascism in Italy. Al Jazeera, why fascism still has a hold on Italy. In Britain, an academic, Giorgia Meloni and the return of fascism, how Italy got here. And in Australia on the national broadcast, the same smear.
Giorgia Meloni's neo-fascist Brothers of Italy party was widely expected to win.
Yes, just like Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, here is the return of fascism. Mussolini, the fascist dictator, the ally of Hitler, that monster.
My fellow citizens who are working to make America great.
I mean, he already had Donald Trump's slogan. Do you see what I mean? But what exactly is it about Meloni herself that is fascist or neo-fascist or semi-fascist or fascist or whatever formulation they want to put on it? What does the media left mean by that fascist word, apart from saying, I don't like her? Let's look closer. Here is what she said 2 years ago about her core beliefs, which seem to be protecting a country's borders, how radical is that, and its national character, and its sovereignty, that these things do matter. Now, a warning here, be warned, because what you're about to hear, this, we're told, is fascism.
Our main enemy today is the globalist drift of those who view identity in all its forms to be an evil to be overcome, and constantly acts to shift real power away from the people to supranational entities headed by supposedly enlightened elites. It means that, whether the false Democrats like it or not, national conservatives in every latitude are actually the only real Democrats, because it is only by defending the nation state that we defend the political sovereignty that belongs to the citizens of that state. But
I'm sure you're shocked. Here's a fascist demanding democracy. I mean, what a monster. Here's a fascist insisting that the democratic nation state, not some unelected international organisation like the UN or the European Union, should be making the calls affecting their own people. I mean, that's disgraceful. Where does it end? I mean, this woman even supports Ukraine against the Russian invaders. Terribly fascist of her. And on the campaign trail in Italian, it's true that Meloni has been, shall we say, more direct. She is against the culture wars and the identity wars, the identity politics that have obsessed the political elite around the West and made so many people feel that their world is being turned on its head.
Sí a la familia natural, no a los lobby LGBT, sí a la identidad sexual, no a la ideología de género, sí a la cultura de la vida, no al abismo de la muerte, sí a la universalidad de la cruz, no a la violencia islamista, sí a fronteras seguras, no a la inmigración masiva, sí al trabajo de nuestros ciudadanos, no a las grandes finanzas internacionales, sí a...
Now, that will sound confronting to some on the left, I've no doubt. But Meloni does have at least a sense of humour to also put out a TikTok video before the election making a play on her name, Meloni or Melons, just to get out the vote. Again, that's got to be the sign of a fascist. But in the end, what actually did get this so-called fascist elected? Turns out a lot of Italians are sick of these lockdowns that she opposed. They're sick of big government forcing them to stay in their homes during the pandemic. They're sick of the mess, the sluggish economy, an energy crisis caused in part by green extremism. And I do have to wonder, do you have to be a fascist to be upset with all that? And of course, many are concerned about mass immigration from the third world. One of her coalition partners is very anti-immigration. And again, I have to ask, which country in Europe doesn't feel under pressure that way? Is that really fascist? Take Sweden. Took in 1 million immigrants, now seeing a huge rise in immigrant crime, rapes, gang violence, and even now grenades and explosions that have forced the former Swedish Prime Minister of the left. She had to admit that integration of immigrants had failed. And now in this month's election, the left in Sweden is finally out. And unusually for Sweden, a right-wing government has replaced it with the support of an anti-immigration party that was the election's biggest winner. Well, more fascists, I guess. Let's just say that. Let's just end the argument with the abuse. Fascists like the French right wing that nearly won the French election this year, like the right wing that took Britain out of the European Union. Maybe they're all fascists or neo-fascists or semi-fascists, or maybe journalists just need to stop slapping on that label and start analysing what's really going on. Like with the Donald Trump phenomenon. Because the themes are pretty much the same. You've got people, often the poorer and more marginalised, they're feeling powerless. They're feeling that their culture, their sense of home, all that's under attack. Their values. They're feeling like there are no borders now. I mean, literally no borders. They're feeling bullied by an elite that locked them in their homes in many countries during the pandemic, that's made the electricity horrendously expensive, that's made streets less safe. And if you complain, that's abused them as racists. It's an elite that, well, I mean, just look around. It's actually made a cock-up of so much, right? And now, when, like I say, when these people complain, they're just called fascists. Well, maybe it's time the left stopped abusing and started understanding. But of course, trying to understand things, that's a lot harder, isn't it? Much harder than shouting, fascisti, fascists.